Hello, Margaret Coolman here with Soul Astrology. This new moon in Gemini at 6 degrees is very close to Mercury at 2 1/3 degrees, who rules Gemini. So Gemini is a very strong energy this month, and its connections are also very strong, trining Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius. It's as though we are very aware of transformation being necessary, aware of it and communicating about it. Because Pluto looks deeper than the normal everyday vision, it's the hidden stuff that we're becoming more aware of. And both ends of that trine are connecting to Saturn and Neptune at the beginning of Aries. Neptune went into Aries during last month. Saturn has only just gone in. This conjunction of these two great forces or principles in Aries is only just beginning. We're going to get a taster right through the summer, and then they go back into Pisces for a period before coming forwards again and establishing their principles as involved with the next phase of our lives, the next step on the transformational process. They're in the process of letting go of Pisces, the past, that stew pot of the way things have been, the sleepiness when everything is all too much because everything has to be included. Our brains can't handle it all. It feels easier to go to sleep on it and just deal with the bits that are ours. And in fact, of course, that is what we're supposed to be doing, and very much so with the Aries influence. Saturn in Aries is going to be very direct. It's about the way in which things do manifest, the way things come about. What works is what Saturn is concerned with. What will work? To leave Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune and somewhat amorphous, and then move into Aries and find that there is Neptune, is a very interesting concept, I think. Maybe it's as though Saturn's sharp focus has been on the spiritual evolution of humanity, North Node in Pisces, and moves into Aries, the individual, meeting Neptune, who rules Pisces, who is dissolving the individuality of Aries as it goes. Saturn, having been on the North Node in Pisces, that is humanity's next step in evolution towards spiritual awareness, moves into Aries to impress that sense of togetherness into each individual. Saturn is interested in what is correct, what is true. Definitely the end of illusions. That's been happening with his movement through Pisces, and there's still more of that to go when he goes back into Pisces in the autumn. But it's as though that individual focus, that understanding of being an individual, isn't going to work without connecting with the greater whole. The Aries skills that we will be manifesting with now include not just the courage to stand alone, but the sensitivity, the sense of everyone needing to stand alone together. Saturn goes back into Pisces at the beginning of September, by which time we will perhaps be a bit more aware of what we need to gather, how we need to deal with our sense of connectedness. And Neptune goes back into Pisces towards the end of October. So there they are. Neptune goes into Aries again at the end of January 26, and Saturn very close behind, mid-February 26. So there it is. Pluto and the Gemini group, all sextiled by Saturn and Neptune. This change in our attitude to being individuals is very supported by everything we're finding out. I suppose one way of putting it might be that, the sticks, that if you could break one stick, but if you put them all together, a whole bunch together, it's much more difficult to break the bunch. So each one stick is supported by being with the others. They're still individual sticks, but the strength in them is much more than just the addition of their strengths. And I think that might be what it is that we'll be finding out, that as long as we've been divided and thought that we each had to fight our own corner, and that there was competition for resources, so we must stand against anybody else who's after the same thing we are, in case they get our share. We've been divided, and in that we're weak, each one of us easily shamed, afraid, cancelled. Whereas if we stand together and support whoever it is who's being shamed or cancelled, whatever, we all become strong, and the system then can be changed, or needs to be changed, because it will clearly not function the way it did. So I think this Saturn and Neptune is crucial. It's interesting, it's squared by Jupiter. Jupiter at the end of Gemini in the new moon chart. Jupiter tends to emphasize, exaggerate what he squares. It gives too much. It's very generous and always gives, but more than we actually want. And in Gemini that could easily be ideas, people saying more than is necessary, distracting from the main thrust of the changes that need to occur. Still operating, we as lots of individuals with our own individual thoughts and what we think will work, and tending to battle rather than talking and looking at everybody's ideas to see how we can all move forward together. The force field of being at war and in competition with everybody else has been so powerful for so long now. It's good that it's taking as long as it's taking, because the adjustments are more likely to be livable with, doable, rather than having a complete blow up and disaster. Jupiter will be presenting, presumably, the wounds of Chiron with that sextile. It's almost exact, the sextile. And Venus is very close to the Chiron, so it is about how we relate to each other. They trine Mars in Leo, and I think this is where discovering all the underlying stuff is still being taken lightly by many. And again, I feel this is necessary, really good thing, because while you're taking things lightly, you are more relaxed, and solutions can rise that fit the situations. The Jupiter in Gemini is showing lots of solutions arising, lots of discussions, and maybe blaming authority the square to Saturn. But it's quite important not to do that too much, because there's the Neptune and the Saturn will be our solution. It's as though the solution to the difficulties is so huge and more than global. It's universal. It's galactic. In terms of our small individual selves, we're not going to be able to say how the changes can be made. So approaching it as a mental exercise to start with is not a bad idea. Which leads me to the full moon chart, where Jupiter has actually just moved into Cancer, Mercury having gone into Cancer a few days before. It looks as though the emotions are at last engaged, and the square is more exact between Cancer and Aries. The sextiles are still supporting the Saturn, Neptune, Uranus and Pluto supporting. But Venus will have moved into Taurus by then, linking very well with the Jupiter, Mercury. Venus, our relationships, and Taurus, the earth itself, how we are relating to earth, how we're relating in the practical level. What can we practically do? Squaring Pluto, things could get quite intense. Often with any square to Pluto, it shows up as our efforts to control things, to stay the way they have been. But at present, I found myself writing in the letter this image that I had the other day of one who tries to maintain the status quo at a time when transformation is happening. It's like trying to push back out of a chrysalis when half of you has already melted down in it. Going back is not an option. One has simply to relax and go in. The process has begun. We have to keep going forwards now. So that fear of the changes is not helpful. And what's needed, I think, more than anything, is a sense of trust in the universal process of transformation. We need to look to nature to see how it works and what works. Leaves don't just drop off trees suddenly. They release their sap. They release it back to the tree, and the link between them gently ends, and the leaf is blown away. Transformation is such a natural process. It's only our sense of identity that doesn't see this, thinking that we really are how we identify ourselves, rather than recognizing the sense of self as the shape of a wave on the surface of the water. The sun still being in Gemini, the full moon is in Sagittarius opposite. And Sagittarius is always up for more ideas, a different way of doing things. Let's make this an adventure. And it's being supported at the other two corners of the triangle there by that Leo Mars upbeat energy of our being, rather than its identity. A positive, growthful energy connecting to Jupiter there, finding ourselves through how we feel about things, rather than what we think about them. And the third corner being the Chiron in Aries. It's such a strong and supportive shape, with Mars powering it up in positivity, that Chiron becomes the healer, a grand trine in fire, with Chiron drawing on the sun to the heart of us, our true communication, and Mars pulling in the sensitive Jupiter. Lots of caring energy, uplifting. And Chiron always works best when we focus on helping someone else. So it looks as though we will be looking for solutions to sort out those people who are at the bottom of the pile. It could look as if there are two sides to it, very probably, with Saturn, Neptune, Pluto and Uranus in one camp, and all the others in the other camp. It's very likely that we would get into blaming the authority figures. And to the degree that the authorities are not being clear and not revealing truth, that it's having to be prized out of them and not being clear, we could make it about them and us. But it's always true that the whole chart operates together, and the quincunx from Pluto to Mercury, who's still very close to Jupiter, is telling us that it's a combination of the two that will work, not taking sides. Trying to find in ourselves the Saturn-Neptune, which equates really to our inner intuitive recognition of truth, following our intuition and trusting the process. So if there is a kind of battle between two sides, we need to locate those two sides inside ourselves and recognize what it is in us that's doing battle. My feeling is that on a sort of more perhaps detached level, the battles that we're having are a process of sorting out our community, finding those people who are our soul group and being worthy to get together and work together in such a way that we don't cut across whatever else is happening. It's not about a battle, it's not about war. It's about finding how very different principles are required during any process of change and growth. The butterfly must work hard to pull its delicate wings out of the chrysalis, and yet the very work it puts in produces that which causes the chrysalis to break down. Chicks have to break out of their eggs, tap, tap, tapping away on the inside of these amazing egg shapes which don't break that easily, building muscle as they work. Much slower, the roots of trees, pushing to where the nutrients are, wrapping themselves round rocks, absorbing fences into the tree trunk. Adaptation, very strong movement, and perhaps from a human point of view, there is pain in that. Dealing with pain in the process of moving through a dichotomy is maybe what builds the muscle that we need to be ready for our soul group as it forms. And for this 18 months or so that we're in, where the nodes of the moon are moving, as it were, from Virgo towards Pisces, we're coming from a position of being contained and moving towards spiritual connection. the connection of all things, not just human beings. I'm speaking very generally about it all happening to everyone and all part of the same movement, but of course each one of us is doing it in our own personal lives, internally in terms of our sense of identity and how we relate to ourselves and our family, but also what plan we have for ourselves, what we would like to be surrounded by, what form our inner creative energy would like to express. And for each of us it's different, which is where the individual charts come in. Whereabouts in the chart the outer planets show which houses, which area of life can indicate the area where most transformation is happening. And finding an attitude to that can be very releasing, relaxing, and make our day-to-day life much more light-hearted. So let's enjoy our individuality and how we relate to everyone else's difference. Thank you. Just listen quietly to the conversations inside. Don't interrupt. Listen through to the end. No need to take sides or make judgments. Hold all the speakers gently in your heart. Understand why they say what they do. No need to change them. Just listen quietly.